You look at statins, there's some risk of Alzheimer's and potential metabolic disorders. But if you stick with the hydrophilic, rosuvastatin would be a good choice versus lipophilic. You're even reducing the risk further. So there are intelligent ways to do this. But anyway, that's my cholesterol rant.
All right, lads, we've got Big Paul here today. He's going to talk to us today for a few topics, and we're going to have to shoot the shit. It's going to be an interesting one. So,
what's going on, Tom? I'm
all
good,
right,
man. Recovering from the shoulder injury. I guess it's more than shoulder. It's bicep, shoulder, everything. Basically, I'm all fucked up. This what the diagnosis was. I thought it was my shoulder, and it was more the bicep tendon. My bicep tendon was barely hanging on. I'm lucky I didn't rupture it. It was pretty crazy. The doctor said there wasn't much left, so got the bicep reattached. I'm going to be a bionic man. Hopefully, I'm out of the sling next week. I don't know if you can see it.
You're going to have even bigger biceps by the end of the time you come back. Yeah,
we'll see. I'm downsized right now. This is the smallest I've been in a long time. I'm down to I'm in the 230s. I can't remember the last time I weighed in the 230s.
You're a big dude, though, aren't you? So.
Yeah, I'm a hair under 6'2". I was on stage at 250 last year, and I usually off season I get but 270. I try not to get too far over my stage weight anymore. 265, 270. It's about as high as I'll go. I pushed up as high as 300 before, but it was ugly.
Bloated and fat, yeah.
wasn't a good look, man. And the hilarious thing is, and I think everybody goes through this. I remember looking back on it, and I have these old pictures, and I God's truth, honest truth, I thought I was 10% body fat. So I'm like, yeah, I'm like 10, 12% body fat. I'll be like 280 on stage, 270.
The fallacy everybody says I'm 10%, and then you look at them and they're 17, 20%.
Hilarious. I get guys reach out to me all the time for coaching, and every fucking one of them's 10% body fat.
Oh God.
It's like, yeah, Paul, I think I'm 10% body fat. I'm pretty good shape. And I'm like, I don't know about that, man. Yeah, I remember thinking that, and then I actually did a diet, and I dieted down, and it was like 190 when I landed on the stage. I'm like, oh fuck, yeah.
I was your first prep, the one where your metabolism got away from you.
Well, no, I did a show when I was in my 20s.
Okay.
Yeah, I that's when I got to that show was a little different. I took about 10 years off the gym.
Okay.
For kids, career, life just happened. What ended up happening is I took one day off that turned into 10 years.
Yeah.
And I
happens to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it happens to a lot of people. I was pretty consistent from the time I was 16, 17 until like 32. And then I took a bunch of I took that decade off. It wasn't like I wasn't doing anything. I was doing jiu-jitsu and riding bikes and playing basketball, but I got a little fat, man. And then I had to lose a bunch of weight when I got back into the gym, and then I decided I was going to do a bodybuilding show after I started getting back in shape. I had a false start during COVID because I did a prep, and I was like 3 weeks out from my show, and I got fucking canceled because of COVID.
Yeah, that was a nightmare time.
Yeah, that sucked. And then so I went back to eating pizza when my show got canceled.
Most people did, I'll be honest. I just remember working out in the garage and going for runs, and that was all you could really do here. The lockdowns are pretty intense.
Yeah, we had. Well, luckily I had a gym. I have like a home gym, so I had a squat rack and bench and all that stuff, so I could still somewhat lift. My training partner came over to my house, and we just lifted in my garage, do what we could. But so I just did that through COVID, and then the next year I got back on stage and definitely over dieted. I over dieted too hard. Did too much cardio.
Shredded though, to be fair.
Yeah, I was definitely shredded. I mean, if you want to call, looking like I came out of a forced labor camp, shredded.
Emaciated.
Yeah. That was the lowest I've ever read on a DEXA scan. I was 4.8% body fat. Yeah, and that's lean on a DEXA. That's super lean. Like usually, like what I see on DEXA scans for show lean, like if you're bodybuilder, like if you're 6%, between 6 and 7, that is lean. When if you get down to 7, that's good enough for a show on a DEXA scan. But I don't think people really appreciate how lean 6% body fat is. Essentially, when you're 6%, the only thing that's left really at that point is just the fat around your organs and a little bit around your brain and shit. There's no subcutaneous fat left at that point.
You just got a paper thin skin, and it hurts to sit down for too long.
Yeah, and it's hard to sustain that. It's like that look is unrealistic to sustain for more than a few weeks, unless you're a genetic freak. There are some people that are just naturally lean. I'd say I'm leaner. My body tends to want to be thin, but I kind of get skinny fat.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I grew up really fat, like really fat, close to like 300 pounds when I was about 18. I was a big boy.
I've been all body types. I've been fat. I've been skinny. I've been muscular. I'm like a chameleon.
Yeah, that's basically what happened to me.
I got pretty fat in my 30s. But yeah, go ahead.
I dropped like probably like 150 pounds nearly. I would go down to like 160-ish at one point. I was super skinny, but all I was doing was running. I was running like 10 mile a day every day, eating keto, and withering away.
Like I look skinny fat though.
Yeah, I look skinny fat as well. Do you know what I mean?
That's the keto diet and doing a lot of cardio does. You get skinny fat.
Yep. It was not worth it, but I learned a lot.
Look, I like the keto thing. I kind of shit on it sometimes just because I like busting balls of the guys that are the keto cult. But I do run some of my clients on keto diets occasionally. If you get somebody that's like severely metabolically disordered and obese, and it's just a simple way to diet. You just tell people don't eat carbs, and you don't really have to think. You don't have to calorie count, and you can get a lot of weight knocked off that way, and a lot of times improve insulin sensitivity, and then you can start dialing in. And like I mostly run carb cycling with my clients, and I do carb cycling when I'm bodybuilding. Right now, I'm not. I'm just eating a flat macro diet, but I don't even know if I'd call it a flat macro. I'm just kind of eyeballing it right now, but I still eat healthy.
You're getting enough, yeah. If you're eating cleanish, then you can get away with not so much counting. But
I'm the opposite of most people. Like when I'm not on a bodybuilding plan, I eat less. So that's okay. Like I'll eat like 3 or 4 times a day.
Well, keto can be helpful for some people. Just the cravings are a bit curved because some people they eat a few carbs and then they just can't control themselves. And
it just depends. And I don't know if you saw it, but there was I don't remember when it came out. I think it was earlier. Maybe it was last year. It was last year. There was a study that came out where they did on keto diets and how, I don't remember the exact details of it, but it was why they wanted to determine why a lot of people say they feel like shit on it. And then there's some people that say they feel great. And they found that there's some genetic variants where some people are better at being in ketosis than other people, but it's a small percentage. It was something like 10%.
Yeah.
So like I try to do keto and I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst shit ever, man. I can't, like, I feel awful. I don't have any energy. I'm tired. I'm hungry. This is the worst. But then there's some people that say they feel like $1 million when they're on it. And then it seems to be some sort of genetic adaptation where some people are better capable of running off of ketones and burning fat than others.
I feel like that percentage comes across a bit higher because people clean up their diet a lot more, kind of like the elimination diet, why carnivore is popular, because on keto I'll feel better, but it's not necessarily because of the lack of carbs. It's just the fact I was avoiding bread, or I was avoiding gluten, or I was avoiding certain trigger foods that were making me feel like crap.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you think about it, it makes sense. Like with keto and carnivore, they're essentially elimination diets. If you say I can't eat carbs, you can't have pizza, ice cream, potato chips, all these other things.
All the stuff that makes you feel a bit shitty. And then you attribute it to the keto or the carnivore. But in reality, if you are eating white rice, potatoes, cleaner carbs, then you're just as good. There is a lot more research coming out about the diabetes function in terms of fat, because a lot of these carnivores now are introducing fruits back into their diet because of they're developing basically insulin resistance and diabetes problems because of their high fat intake. It's a really interesting and complex system that prolonged periods can cause it.
Well, you know how they make rats insulin resistant in mice and
a lot of seed oils now.
Yeah, they feed them a bunch of saturated fat, and then they become insulin resistant. So that's essentially what these carnivore guys are doing, because it affects the phospholipid layer of the cell membrane, and the insulin receptor is a transmembranal receptor, so it has to pass through the cell membrane. I might be botching some of this, but essentially, if you think about a saturated fat, it's a very rigid structure. You can look at it. It's a long chain fatty acid. It's very rigid, and it makes the cell wall rigid. And you guys end up insulin resistant. If they were doing carnivore style dieting and eating a bunch of EFAs instead, they probably wouldn't be making themselves insulin resistant. But they're not. They're eating a shit ton of saturated fats and screwing themselves up.
That's where like the keto side can come in, where people are like, oh, I ate eggs and bacon and heavy fat meats, pure saturated fats. Whereas if they ate leaner meats with, say, a lot of monounsaturates, they generally would have much better health outcomes. I think that's what Steve does. He has a lot of monounsaturates in his diet. Macadamia nuts, avocado oil.
He does that. Yep.
And that's
and I think that's the thing that most people don't understand, that like with carbs, they all of them eventually get converted to glucose. Now we can debate about how rapidly they get metabolized and how that affects your blood glucose levels, etc. But fats, I mean, there are many different like not all fats are created equal, man. They act completely different in the body.
Yeah. And the rate of oxidation is completely different. So
yeah,
the health outcomes are completely different. I'm not on the whole PUFA bandwagon, but I do believe that there is some data that's supporting it. Whether it's as detrimental as people think is still unknown, because food studies are notoriously bad. Let's put it that way.
Well, you can't control for other factors like activity and like who knows what the fuck people, unless you locked people in a room and fed them and controlled their activity levels. That's the only way you could do a true study. And there's otherwise it's just it's highly educated anecdote at that point. But I think we have general ideas, but really, it really just boils down to this, man. Just be active, eat healthy, eat real whole foods. And most of the time, if you just do that, the outcome is going to be better.
Yeah.
Just stay away from processed shit, be active, lift some weights, do some cardio, get enough protein in, eat real food, and you're probably going to have a good health outcome if you just do those simple principles.
Yeah, which is something that most people who actually end up on TRT aren't doing as well. So,
well, I mean, I get it all the time with coaching clients. I get guys come to me running a shit ton of PEDs, and they still look like ass, and they think the answer is some secret cycle. And I probably disappoint them, and I'm like, a lot of times I'll end up pulling guys back, having them run less, and I get their diet cleaned up.
Yeah. And they feel better, but the outcomes are way better.
Yeah, the outcomes are a lot better.
Because they're not eating McDonald's and all the other crap that goes with it. And I find personally, like, my performance is way better in the gym if I'm eating white rice than it is if I'm eating any other carb at the moment. I know they're the same, but in terms of the inflammation, maybe some sort of elimination, my performance is better.
What? I think bodybuilders figured that out like 30 years ago.
Yeah, they're always ahead of the curve, I swear. Always ahead of the curve, like at least 5 to 10 years, a lot of them. Like the BPC situation, do you know what I mean?
That's why with the diet, I like carb cycling, which is essentially caloric cycling. Like you think about it logically. Carbs are just fuel at the end of the day. I mean, there's a certain amount that your body needs to be functional, but they're just fuel at the end of the day. So with the carb cycling, we're really titrating our dose of carbohydrates up and down based on activity level. So if we're not active, like if I'm sitting around on my ass all day long, I might not eat any, or eat, a really low amount. If I have, if I'm really pushing it in the gym, I may once or twice a week do a super high carbohydrate day to push glycogen synthesis and keep fats low. So, I mean, it really is sort of self-regulating. You adjust that substrate, the carbohydrates, that macronutrient up and down based on activity level and how much nutrition as far as glycogen and glucose that you can synthesize into glycogen and store. Like if I'm not really lifting right now, there's no point in me doing high days. Like I can't.
Yeah, you don't need it.
I'm not, yeah, no, I don't need it. It would be pointless for me to eat 1,000 grams of carbs right now. I just get fat.
It's just calories. At the end of the day.
Yeah, it's just excess calories. Now, how your body partitions those calories, that's very different. So I think that's a thing that people misunderstand. Those carbohydrates can be stored as liver glycogen, muscle glycogen, and then they go through lipogenesis and can get converted into lipids and stored as body fat. But it's a long-winded process. It's a long-winded process. Whereas if you just eat those saturated fats, they're only going to be one or two things going to happen. Either you're going to utilize them for energy, or they're going to be stored energy. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And there's only one place they get stored.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, there's a small amount of intramuscular lipid storage, but it's like minuscule. It's not even anything worth considering. It's a couple percent. But yeah, I mean, they're just going to be stored as body fat if you're not utilizing it. Whereas that carbohydrate spillover can be synthesized in the muscle or liver glycogen if you're metabolically healthy. That's a big if.
There's a lot to go into that, but if you're, like you said, if you're active and you understand what you're eating, then you're unlikely to be metabolically dysfunctional to an extent.
Yeah, and I would say this: most people that come to me for fat loss, they are metabolically unhealthy. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I start, is working on getting people getting insulin sensitivity back, getting them metabolically healthy. And then, through diet, and then now, some of the GLP-1 drugs are pretty amazing as well.
For a lot of people, the retatrutide and tirzepatide come to mind. But
yeah, I just posted a thing up yesterday about retatrutide. Yeah, it's fucking crazy, man. Incredible. It's from 1 milligram.
Triglycerides down, everything. It's
you have to be better in better health if all that comes down.
Yeah.
I was laughing. I had like 2 guys that came out on my comment section were like, your cholesterol's too low, that's not healthy. And I'm like, bro, come on, man.
Yeah. Oh, it's so confused. People get so confused by cholesterol, and the data's there for most of it. There's not necessarily causation, but there's a hell of a lot of correlation. And
and look, it's another one of those things where it's multifactorial. I mean, if you I've ran high cholesterol most of my life. I just genetically, I think I'm predisposed to having high lipids. And then every time I go get a calcium CT scan done, it's 0. But that is likely due to I don't have other compounding risk factors. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I eat healthy, I work out. I get a lot of essential fatty acids in my diet. So all these other factors play into it. I think that's the thing that people don't understand with the cholesterol by itself is not going to cause heart disease. There's other factors that have to be at play. Years and years of high blood pressure and being sedentary and metabolically disordered and all these other things that play into it. So it's just a contributor.
Mm-hmm. And I think that there was a study that came out, I think it was a month ago now, with the keto study that was funded by a carnivore, which was in the lean mass hyper-responders, they call them. And that's basically people who are, they deem are metabolically healthy, but are eating large quantities of saturated fats and have cholesterols. I think it was above 250. And that was just the overall. And let's just say the results weren't what they were anticipating, because it was funded by a keto fanatics. and they found that basically there was a higher progression of plaque in the keto or the higher cholesterol individuals on those diets. So when people say it's non-contributing, but there's a huge factor that it can. If you don't have any plaque, then maybe not so. But if you have plaque, it increases the progression of plaque quite substantially.
I see a cardiologist annually, and the guy's also a certified lipidologist. He's one of the best lipidologists in the DC metro area. And he told me, he's like, Paul, he said, I make an entire career out of putting stents in people on keto diets.
Yeah, insane. And people are still obsessed by it.
Yeah, he said it is disproportionate to the amount of stents that I put in people that are on keto diets. Yeah. And I think once again, it's we go back to people just make shitty food choices.
Yeah.
You can do it in a healthy way. Like if you're doing it like what Steve is doing it, you can do it relatively healthy. But I think most people aren't. They're not paying attention.
They throw back to the 90s Atkins style diet where it's like, oh yeah, you can eat bacon, eggs, and unlimited everything basically of high saturated fats. When it doesn't work that way really. For most people, certain people it will if they're genetically predisposed. Not.
Yeah, well, that goes down to it. It's genetics. I mean, what is it? Yeah. We know that smoking can cause lung cancer, but when you actually look at the numbers, it's a very small percentage of people that smoke that actually end up getting lung cancer. It's like, I don't remember the exact number, but I think it's less than 1%, but it's higher than the general population. So it is a contributing factor, but it's not a guarantee that you will. But, once again, and this is the way it was explained to me, and this is the way my cardiologist explained it. It made a lot more sense to me. And he's like, look, we're hedging bets here. Yeah. You're playing a numbers game. You're a numbers guy. So he's like, you're playing the statistics game. He's like, you might get lucky. You might be the guy that gets lucky, but why not have some insurance and play it a little safer? And especially like if we're PED users, like we're already playing with fire with lipid skewing. PEDs make lipid skewing way worse, and then all the other contributing factors to cardiovascular disease like high blood pressure, arterial stiffness, and skewed lipid metabolism. And we're eating a lot of times bodybuilders and guys that are powerlifters and stuff aren't eating the best diets either. No. They're pounding a shit ton of food.
Especially. Yeah,
probably like a lot of guys are metabolically disordered and insulin resistant, and on top of it, and they never diet down, and it's a bunch of risk factors that dudes eat way too much fucking salt sometimes, not enough potassium, and then they end up having high blood pressure. There's all these other factors that play into it, and then so you combine all these risk factors together, and then you end up having a cardiovascular event. It's not any one thing by itself usually.
Well, it's all about risk management. Like you said, if you're going to take the risk and use PEDs, like you said, you don't drink or smoke. I don't really drink. I'll drink once a year, maybe on a special occasion.
Yeah, look, the way I describe it to people, I used to be an avid motorcyclist. I don't ride anymore because it's just too dangerous, and I'm kind of, that point of my life is actually behind me. I take all my risk in the gym. But I look at it this way. Look, it's like, riding 180 miles an hour. There are things you can do to limit risk when you're riding 180 miles an hour, but it's still risky. Like if you do it on the street in your shorts and no helmet, you're taking a huge risk. Whereas if you control variables, go to a track where there's no other cars and put on a helmet and a tracksuit and know how to ride, you actually are certified to ride at those speeds, and you can do it with less risk, but it's still a risky endeavor. It's the same thing with PED use. You want to control all the variables you possibly control to lower your risk. That doesn't mean that you're going to be bulletproof. You can still do everything correctly and end up with a poor health outcome, but you are lowering the odds of having that poor health outcome if you just control all those other variables, and cholesterol being one of them. Yeah. So I don't know why there's literally no cost or detriment to keeping your cholesterol lower. It's not going to impact you in any sort of negative way, that at least not that I have seen.
Yeah, especially if you're on PEDs, like you don't need the cholesterol to, and you, like you said before, you synthesize enough in your body outside of
your body makes
nutrients.
enough. I have yet to see a blood panel where somebody's deficient in cholesterol. It has not happened once.
Yeah,
not once. So look, the way I look at it is, why not hedge your bets? There's no potential downside for having it lower. I mean, we could debate the risk factors of taking statins. There certainly are some risk factors with statins, but once again, we're playing a numbers game. I am betting that using a low dose statin is probably a better outcome than letting my cholesterol run wild while using PEDs. I'm betting that that's probably a safer bet.
Yeah.
While there is some risk to taking this, you look at statins, there's some risk of Alzheimer's and potential metabolic disorders. But if you stick with the hydrophilic, rosuvastatin would be a good choice versus lipophilic. You're even reducing the risk further. So there are intelligent ways to do this. But anyway, that's my cholesterol rant.
No, it's good. It's good. It's an important one, because I think there's so much information out there, especially with people saying it doesn't matter. It does matter.
Well, it might not matter for you. Some people, like I said, you can smoke cigarettes your whole life, and we all know that guy. I got an uncle that's almost 80 years old, and he's fucking smoked and drank his entire life, and he's diabetic, and the guy's in his fucking 80s, like
you're just chugging along, and you just
I'm like, how is this possible? But
some 55-year-old marathon runner just drops dead, and it's just the risk.
But once again, that's just the odds game. It's you just got lucky.
Yeah.
You have increased the odds that you are going to have a poor outcome, and you just got fucking lucky. It's like a guy riding a motorcycle without his helmet and wearing shorts and going fast and say, I've never had an accident. Well, dude, you just got fucking lucky. That's why.
Yeah. That's exactly the point.
Yeah, you just got lucky stuff.
I don't know. It's blown out of proportion for a lot of people what they can and can't do. But
we are increasing risk by taking PEDs. So the way I look at it is, you really, like, if you really want to do that, you really it would be intelligent. And look, I'm all for everybody living their life whatever the way they want. If you want to eat ribeyes and douse them with butter all day long every day, by all means, go for it. But I'm just trying to educate people on what could potentially lower their risk, and that would be
well, if you pull in one lever, you can always pull in a different lever and basically reduce the risk as much as possible.
Yeah, and if you weren't taking all the PEDs, then maybe it's not as big of a risk, but you're adding another risk factor in with it.
Yeah, and that's why you don't drink and you don't smoke. Do you know what I mean?
Don't drink, don't smoke, eat a clean diet, do cardio,
lifestyle. Yeah, the cardio thing's important.
I mean, the diet and cardio are probably the two biggest things you can do to improve your blood markers. Well, now
even if you are going to lift, like if you're doing cardio, you're still going to have better outcomes in cardiovascular health than anything else. So, and people think like, oh, it's going to ruin the gains. Not really. It's better to have the long-term health than it is to minimize some short-term risk. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, agreed. So you said you wanted to talk about mental health a little bit in bodybuilding?
Yeah, so it's actually part of what we were talking about as well, that there's been a lot of like recent link between like carbohydrate, inability to process carbohydrates in the brain properly, linked to mental health disorders in terms of metabolic dysfunction. Yeah. And this comes about by basically, if you have insulin resistance, then you can stop the production of certain neurochemicals. Whether it's true is still out there. It's a new area of research. But what I was really interested in was the current state of mental health in bodybuilders, in terms of it's a double-edged sword almost for a lot of people.
Well, bodybuilders be crazy, Tom.
Yeah. You grew up like me, where you're super overweight, or you're super skinny. It seems like.
Yeah, I mean, what I found is guys that take PEDs tend to have a lower aversion to risk. than other people, and they tend to be. I don't know. There seems I don't. It's sort of a chicken and an egg scenario. I don't know which came first, but whether unhinged people do bodybuilding or bodybuilding makes people unhinged.
Yeah.
I mean, here's sort of my take on it. Like, look, we know that some of these PEDs definitely can affect cognitive and mental health. Like certainly heavy androgens. There are androgen receptors in the brain, and then we're already doing other things like you said. If you're metabolically unhealthy, on top of it, we know that running high blood sugar all the time is linked to Alzheimer's. There's a bunch of other risk factors that go on there. And I think guys, when they're playing around with their hormones and taking some of the more toxic stuff that passes the blood-brain barrier, if you're already
basically,
then I just stay away from them anymore.
Yeah.
I don't mess with them.
I don't touch them. There was a point in my life when, because mainly I've been on TRT, I've done a couple of the 500 mg cycles of test, and I was interested because I was losing my hair at one point, and I was like, I'll try this popularized Deca only cycle. I've never been more depressed in my life.
Oh, it's terrible.
You're taking 500 milligrams to get enough estrogen conversion, but I've never felt so unmotivated and so sort of flat in terms of my health. And I've been, throughout my life, I've been on the list of antidepressants at points. And I just felt that was one of the worst points of my life, I'll be honest, was trying that. And it took quite a while to get past it. And since then, I don't advocate anything past 100 milligrams. And that's only if people are in constant joint pain. And then it's a means to an end. Instead of using an opioid, you can use the joint lubrication from a Deca or an MPP and gain some sort of benefit. Or if they're chronic NSAID users and you're going to save your kidneys a little bit.
Yeah, I have anxiety, and my anxiety just goes through the roof when I take Deca. I mean, it's a synthetic progesterone. It does all sorts of fucking weird shit in your body, man. It passes the blood-brain barrier. It affects dopamine.
Yeah, the dopamine receptor is the main one for a lot of people that they don't realize that is affecting them. And once you affect one level of dopamine, it causes other levels to rise. So norepinephrine and stuff comes up, and it can be
and then
generally why you get the anxious, because the norepinephrine comes up for a lot of people anyway.
Yeah, and then I see dudes will throw like they're worried about erectile dysfunction with it, and I'm like, that's the least of my worries. And then they'll throw something like cabergoline at it, which is a dopamine agonist, and then you're making things even worse, man. You end up having dopamine agonist withdrawal syndrome, and which can permanently fuck you up on top of it. Yeah, literally make you insane. It's funny because I find the long-term effects of Deca are actually worse than Tren.
In terms of cognition, I'm from what I've read, because people tend to run it at higher dosages for longer. Tren, they kind of like the insomnia stops them or something like that, so they end up just quitting. But the Deca users, they're all a little bit like, I know quite a few people talk about this. They're a little bit weird. Some of them, the people that were used Deca in that time period, especially in the 80s when it was a bit more popular, and they're all a little bit cognitively dissonant. Let's put it that way.
Well, I mean, prime example, and I know this is another one that I'm probably going to upset some people with, but Mike Mentzer, and his brother. I mean, Mike had other problems. He was a meth addict on top of it, but Mike seemed to probably be mentally ill beforehand. I don't know if he had some sort of schizophrenia or he was bipolar or what. There's definitely some story. I've known some people that knew him personally, and like he was paranoid and constantly imagining things that weren't real and stuff like that. And then he was running these Deca only cycles on top of it.
It's like which one's first, the chicken or the egg? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, it certainly didn't help the situation. Probably put him further into a spiral on top of the amphetamines that he was using on top of it.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. If you're taking Deca, then you're down regulating dopamine, and then you're taking amphetamine, dopamine.
well, not only that, like you're not getting any DHT as well, which is
Yeah.
incredibly important to a male body for
Mhm.
functioning properly. Like, yeah, there's no DH. It converts to DHN. There's no DHT
Yeah.
conversion, and it's just I don't know that it's. If I were going to put it in, it would just be like you said, just a sprinkle for
Yeah.
synovial
Only
fluid
for
and
certain people, really, if I'm ever going to do it. And like you said, the DHT, I'm anti 5-alpha reductase because I tried them as well, and obviously I'm a bit of a strange case because I was on SSRIs at the time, and there is a sort of interaction with them anyway that if you combine, you're going to get a
5AR inhibitors.
yeah. So
Yeah, they
you're
can
going to have a
cause all
struggle.
kinds of problems too, guys. I've seen guys, what is the phenesteroid syndrome, where they end up having permanent erectile dysfunction from it.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
mainly to do with like the androgen receptor becoming severely downregulated. Well, yeah, it's a really complex situation for some people. Whether the 5-alpha reductase enzyme has just been permanently changed, and they need super physiological amounts of DHT to restore
yeah.
5-8 basically. And so that's a really difficult one because there's a lot of people selling snake oil out there trying to fix this PFS, and they're offering because that's a horrible way to experience life if you have chronic depression alongside erectile dysfunction, like permanent erectile dysfunction.
Yeah,
These guys are looking for any way out, and someone's telling them, if you pay me $5,000, I'll cure you.
I do a lot of blood consults, blood work consults or health consults, and I would say erectile dysfunction is probably the number one thing that
Yeah,
people reach out to me for.
yeah. And it happens a lot on TRT for poorly managed TRT as well. And
Yeah, and
people
most of
don't
the time when I
understand.
see that, it's just estradiol being out of
Yeah,
control.
yeah.
Estrogen gets too high, and then guys end up. A lot of times, it's a quick, easy fix. Just get your estrogen in range, and you'll get
We'll feel a
erectile.
bit better. Yeah,
You'll get erectile function back. But yeah, look. I mean, like there are a lot of people that are a little on the edge in bodybuilding, but there's been quite a few bodybuilders that killed themselves.
yeah.
Um, committed suicide. I think I can think of one guy in the last year that have, or guys that just go batshit crazy, man. They just get unhinged.
Well, it is a sport of extreme to an extent because
Oh
you've got to
yeah, yeah. You're
yeah,
going to attract extreme people. So,
yeah.
like I
You're gonna
said, chicken and egg.
yeah, you're gonna get the people who want the severe body dysmorphia, which is a really interesting topic as well because you're getting in the UK currently. There's actually more body dysmorphia in young men than there is in young women, which surprises a lot of people because women generally had the shorter end of the stick, especially in the 90s with their unrealistic weight standards where people were stick thin, or like the Britney Spears where there's a photo being like, look at how fat she is and she's got like a tiny muffin top or something like this.
Yeah, I think things have gotten better. I've seen as I've
Yeah,
gotten older with women, there's the body positivity movement. We can debate that, but I think for largely it's been positive for people where people are more accepting of who they are. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me with men because of the unrealistic expectations set on social media. You see people that fitness influencers that are ripped 365 days a year, the guys that are running Tren year round, or dudes that just keep posting the same pictures over and over and over again,
yeah.
or they're photoshopping their pictures. There's that too.
Or the fake natties that are like, you just need to work harder, and
Yeah,
it
that drives
blows
me
my
nuts.
mind. Yeah, because like you said, like you could do everything right and still have a negative outcome.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean like, but then they'll spout that they're working harder than everybody and that you're not working hard enough and stuff like this. And it's like, well, one, you're genetically gifted, and two, this isn't helping the people who really do want to change their life and want the positive outcome. Instead, you're just making it seem monumentally unachievable.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's and then you're constantly seeing that stuff, and I think young men, I get a lot of guys that come to me that they also they don't have a realistic view of what they can accomplish in a given period of time.
Yeah.
And then so like their answer is just to take a bunch of drugs to try to fix that.
Yeah.
So to live up to that expectation. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all that it's worse in young men than it is in women.
And they're just pushed into, like you said, they pushed in. They take these compounds, especially the younger generation now. The SARM goblins, as people like to call them.
Yeah,
I feel for them. I feel for them with the social pressure that they're under to achieve this look, and then that they don't understand what they're doing to their hormones by taking these compounds, or they're sold misinformation that if they're taking enclomiphene, they won't stop the natural production, and it's all dose dependent really on what they're taking. So sure, you might not if you're taking 5 milligrams of YK11 or something, a relatively low dose, but
you,
if you
you know what's
if you're pushing it up, like
you know what's crazy? Like I told you, I look at a lot of blood panels. I look at hundreds annually, and I it's hilarious because the guys that take the SARMs are more fucked up than the dudes blasting a bunch
it's
of
insane.
PEDs.
Yeah, I know. You look at them and you're like, why are you doing this to yourself? Why?
I'm like, you're literally taking a drug that doesn't work as well and
It,
makes your
it
blood worse.
it almost makes D-bol only cycles look tame.
Hey
Look, at least you got
man,
estrogen conversion. Do you know what I mean? Like, at least you got something positive from it.
hey man, when I was in my 20s, I loved my D-ball only cycles.
I'm not gonna lie. I did it when I was younger. I didn't start PEDs until I was about 25, and this was after I ended up with like a 250 nanograms per deciliter, as if in America we do nmol. So I was basically like
Yeah,
an eight nmol in the UK, which was roughly around that. And but you have to get like 3 tests within a year that come out that low before they'll put you on in the UK. It's So I just went my own route and decided to do my own research, and then ended up going on and had great success. I'll be honest, but I just feel for these kids now who what something that scares me is, and it's difficult to say because say if you've got people like Sebum who started so early
yeah,
and they became the best in the world, but he is technically a different person than he would have been if he hadn't started until he was 25 because of
yeah.
basically the change in the hippocampus and the brain from having elevated androgens. So he is not the person he was meant to be to an extent. And I feel for these kids as well a little bit that they're changing their personality, and potentially if you did run a 19 Nors or something similar, you could have like a long lasting effects basically.
Yeah, I swear. I mean, when I was younger, I never really had anxiety issues, and I ran a lot of Deca when I
Yeah,
was younger, and I definitely changed how my brain works a little
yeah.
bit.
There,
Thankfully, I don't get issues with depression, but I do have, you know, I'll have panic attacks once in a while. I get social anxiety, and I didn't when I was younger.
yeah, and I think maybe that was a contributing factor. Maybe it was always there,
Yeah, maybe.
but you don't really know. You don't know until you got to the age that you were meant to be. About 25 for most males before they're fully developed. Anyway, arguably their mental state is developed much earlier, but full development is 25 for males anyway.
I was probably more like 30 for me.
Talk about that, you know.
I wish I had waited a little long. I started dabbling when I was 19
Mm,
with PEDs, but it was just like stuff was so like on. It was just like it's not like now where you can just order whatever you want off the internet and it's at your door in 2 days. It was you had to buy whatever some dude in the gym had once in a while, but like the stuff we did back then was just like 6 weeks of 10 milligrams of D-ball or 6 weeks of 10 milligrams of Anavar. It was very, very tame. And then you come off and, it was,
well, even then, you've got they're relatively compared to the SARMs, they're relatively benign because one, they're more well researched, and two, one, at least you've got methyl estradiol coming from the D-bol. I know it's non-bioidentical and not exactly the best, but at least it's something compared to the SARMs giving you nothing. And then even Anavar, because it's a low androgen, you're maybe not affecting the neurochemistry as much. So
Yeah.
you could argue that it's less detrimental, those sort of things, than what the SARMs are doing now, because just pure research on top of it.
Well, I do see a lot of guys. I mean, yeah, I don't want to name names, but you see a lot of these young fitness influencers that are clearly unhinged. These
Yeah.
guys are just fucking insane, man.
Yeah.
And
And
there's
it's a really difficult one to tell, though, whether that's a persona or not. But like you said, even if it is a persona, a normal person wouldn't be thinking of portraying that persona.
no, I don't think that. Well, I think sometimes people get addicted to the attention. They're trying to do outrageous stuff to get the attention. But there have been quite a few people, and look, I don't want to name names, but there's been quite a few people that were sort of bodybuilding fitness influencers that have passed away just from the reckless and dangerous life they lived. And they were all mentally, I mean, you can think about them. I mean, people know who I'm talking about, but I can think of 3 guys right off the top of my head that are no longer with us, that were pretty popular on social media, that were clearly not all there.
Yeah. The degradation of their mental state was documented as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was well documented, being, violent and and I don't want to slam anybody directly, but you guys can fill in the blanks and know who I'm talking about. And I'm also, I have had some negative interactions with another dude recently that is completely unhinged, and not well mental. I actually kind of feel sorry for him. I probably shouldn't have poked at him, but guys like constantly coming after me. But he's clearly not well as well, and somebody who's been on PEDs for a lifetime.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I try to take extended periods of time where I come down to just TRT. I will get aggressive and blast now and then, but I've been pretty much just running 200 milligrams of test since my bodybuilding show.
Yeah, it works.
It's
If
like 8 months.
it works, if it's not broke, why change? Do you know what I mean? If
can,
it's properly managed.
if you keep your diet buttoned up, I think this is the thing that people don't understand. If you keep your diet fairly buttoned up and you are working out hard, you can maintain. I'm not saying you're going to gain a bunch of size on TRT, but you can maintain like 70-80% of what your full full size. I mean, like, I'm 240 right now. It's not like I'm small, but
Well, and like you said, when you do cycle back on, it comes back relatively quickly.
yeah, and a lot of that's just water and mineral retention and glycogen synthesis that comes from taking the PEDs. I take, if I took 9 units of growth hormone for a week straight, I'd probably put on 10 pounds.
Yeah. And it's all part of the body dysmorphia that comes from the fitness community. And I don't really know how to address a lot of it, I'll be honest. I do think about it. I think about what these kids are going through, and how do you become a positive role model for some of these people? Because like, you have a son who's a video gamer as well. Kudos to
you. Yeah, my kid. It's funny. My kid has zero interest in bodybuilding or any of that stuff. In a way, I'm kind of happy for him.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing. I would rather that. Do you know what I mean? Than somebody. It is born from like an insecurity almost to pursue it for a lot of people.
I mean, I was always kind of skinny fat, and I remember seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger when I was a kid, and I wanted to look like him, and I was kind of the nerd too, and the girls didn't really like me and all that stuff, and it was all like all these things that were in the back of I definitely have body dysmorphia. I hate losing weight and getting small. I think that's something that I deal with it now. I try to be more I try not to be mental about it like I used to be, but like I would get upset if I started getting small.
Yeah, I think it's part of the experience, but it's very difficult to detach yourself from your image, and it's part of self-awareness to an extent, understanding that's part of it. You understand that when you are smaller, it makes you feel negatively. For some people, they don't realize why they're associating being smaller with being negative. And there's a lot of things you can do to change it, but the first step is always recognizing it.
Well, you hit on a key point there, self-awareness. That's something that just takes constant practice, and you have to learn how to control that inner dialogue, the voice in your head, the id that's there. That, like, I think most people don't take the time to practice and quiet that voice and take time to reflect and be objective about themselves. It's really difficult to do. I mean, it takes a lot of work. It's mindfulness is something that takes a lot of rehearsal and practice.
Even to basically identify and vocalize what you are feeling is a difficult thing, and a lot of people struggle with it. And it's not saying you have to be perfect and you have to change it. Sometimes just acknowledging it is enough to basically calm it down a little bit.
Yep. And I think as men too, it's doubly hard because I don't know how you grew up, but like there was, my dad was pretty hard, man. My dad was like, you don't complain, you don't whine, you don't, talk about this or that, so we're kind of taught from an early age, or there's a social expectation that we need to be tough and masculine and all this stuff. And I mean, like, sometimes you have to be a little bit vulnerable to realize some of this stuff and to be objective and to
instead
self-reflect and all
your head
stuff.
Down and grinding through it, which is what you're expected to do a lot of the time.
I mean, there is some merit to pushing through things and hard work, but not at the detriment of your well-being.
Yeah. And even just recognizing that it's about what is the purpose of it. Say, this is a question I do ask, or I went through. There was a period in my life where I didn't train for a year because I couldn't understand whether I was going to the gym for myself or whether I was going for external validation of being in shape. Was I going because I wanted to be the guy who was in shape, or wanted to be bigger and stronger so people would validate me? And it took, I think I spent a year basically where I was doing walking and hiking and stuff like that, but it was purely for my own thing before I realized I actually enjoy the gym. It's a byproduct, the looking good. I like the control that it gives me, which is something that bodybuilding, part of the mental health, what you can learn from bodybuilding itself is the control. You can control the way you move your body. You can control the way your body grows, and you can control the way you lose fat, and you can control your diet. There's a lot of variables that you can change. There's a lot of responsibility there. And I think a lot of people that struggle with mental health, it's due to the fact that they feel completely out of control. Whatever they do, nothing changes.
Yeah, and that's the positive I've talked about quite frequently. I don't know how much of my stuff you've listened to. That the positive part of it that I actually love about bodybuilding is it does teach you that aspect of how it was really like. I remember being a teenager and not understanding that you have control over your destiny and you have control, some control. Like, there's some things that are out of your control, but like, I don't know if you ever heard of Stephen Covey talks about it, the 90-10 principle, where there's 90% of things that happen in your life are under your control, and then there's the 10% that's not. And you spend your effort and time focused on that 90%, the 10% you can't let bother you. And I think that's what, like, bodybuilding was like, really and I see the light turn on a lot of people's head. I see a lot of recovering addicts come over to bodybuilding. I've had a lot of my clients that are recovering addicts, and I think that level of control and learning that you can actually control an outcome through your hard work and dedication and attention to detail, it especially if you have struggled, like you said, with those types of things, it really, I think it can be therapeutic and helpful. People don't believe me when I say this. I have never really cared about how I place in bodybuilding shows. Look, who doesn't like external validation? I mean, it's intoxicating, but it's never been my driving factor in why I do this stuff. I just love the competition with myself, the ability to push myself, to manipulate my body, to have control over things. And I think these are all lessons that you can take and apply to all other areas of your life, to business, relationships, etc.
It gives you the basically the mindset that it is changeable, and there's certain things that aren't. So your lat insertion is not really going to change.
Right? Yeah. No, you can't control that.
Yeah. So
you can't control that. You can't.
Your body shape is certain things like you can't control, so you've just got to work around them or work on your.
No, it doesn't mean you can't improve, though, right?
Yeah.
you can always improve. Like I don't have control over my genetics. I don't have control over, um, it's one of the reasons why I kind of admire Nick Walker
Yeah,
quite a bit. He's one of my favorite.
incredible showing. And Pittsburgh, was
Yeah, he
it?
looked great, and
Yeah.
he's such a nice guy too. He's just
Yeah.
if you ever meet him or talk to him, he's just a genuine, just nice person,
Mhm.
positive person. But he's a guy that had I would call subpar genetics from the start. You can look
Yeah,
at
yeah, those first images of him when
his
he's
structure was terrible. Clearly, he has
yeah,
elite genetics when it comes to being able to
yeah,
grow. But who
yeah,
knows how much of that is him working hard?
yeah,
Right? He's just a dude that just puts his head down. I don't think he cares about the attention. He's
no,
a guy like I've seen him at like the Arnold and stuff, and like when he has to do boosts, he's hiding back in the corner. Like he clearly doesn't seem to like the attention.
yeah. From what I understand, like his social media presence was quite stunted at first. He was not a big fan of having to put himself out there. From what I've like
Well, and a
heard.
lot of these guys are very. He seems to be sort of. I would say a lot of your highly successful bodybuilders tend to be introverts.
Mhm.
It is the ultimate introvert sport. You don't. It's just yourself in the gym, and you don't really you can do it all by yourself. I mean, look at
Yeah,
Dorian Yates. That guy was the ultimate introvert.
yeah, yeah. He's actually like he's from similar area to me. Yeah, the dungeon is like is it's not a gym anymore, but I've been there like in the day. It's an interesting place. Like, but Dorian, I was a big fan of him for a long time. Obviously, because there's not well, Samson's incredible now, and I do like Samson, but the British had been a little bit struggling in terms of bodybuilding performance. James Hollinghead as well, he's incredible,
Yeah,
but
James seems
it's
like a super nice guy too.
yeah,
He seems like a very down to
it's a
earth.
very competitive scene here though. Like I think we are the highest PED users in the world, or some of them.
I have a lot of clients in England.
Yeah, I think we are some of the highest
A
PED
lot of
users in the
clients in
world.
the UK.
I
There are a lot of
know.
people. A lot
Sorry,
of
I
people
know.
here in the US using them.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Like, I was living in Wales, which is a smaller country in the UK, and basically, there's more band. It's a very there's a lot of hills and a lot of mountains, but there's not much to do there. And there's more bans for steroids or basically performance-enhancing drugs in rugby there than there is in basically Ireland, Scotland, England combined. It's like because all they can do there is the gym and play rugby, so that a lot of them turn to performance-enhancing drugs.
It seems
And
like a
it's
lot of um, the good UK bodybuilders are Welsh.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. They
pretty
come
sure
from the yeah,
I'm pretty sure Flex is Welsh, isn't James?
yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Uh, I think he's Gloucester, but might be wrong. I might be that. I'll have to check that one. I'll be honest. I'll have to
Yeah, I'm
check
not
that one.
sure. I think Luke Sandow maybe.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, there
but
was a
there
lot
just
of.
isn't much to do there. I'll be honest. It's a beautiful place. There's a nice, lovely hills. You can do a lot of hiking, but it's because it used to be a miners' country. Really, it was a heavy mining communities out there, slate mining as well, similar things. And then when that got all scrapped in the 80s, it kind of got very poor very quickly. And
Yeah, I mean we have regions here that are like that in the U.S.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean it's the ultimate introvert if you have nothing else to do sport where you can just turn in on
mm,
yourself. And I don't know, sometimes I just like putting my headphones on, going to the gym, and just getting locked in on training. It's therapeutic for me.
yeah.
I just shut my brain off and get a physical outlet. I sit on my ass all day long in front of a computer. I don't get that physical outlet.
Yeah, it's actually something I was going to bring up would be like it is a form of therapy to a lot of people. Just one, they can sit there and disconnect from society, but then also when we were talking about mindfulness, there is a certain element of mindfulness when you finish a set or you're in a set and you're focused on breathing
Yeah.
and you are sitting there and all you can really feel is the heavy breath or you're focusing on trying to bring your heart rate down a little bit so you can get ready for your next set. And I think it's really weird that somehow it becomes this almost meditation.
Yeah. And, I have a very chaotic mind. Like my brain is just constantly working. Um, Sorry, I had to yell at my kids. They're making
Okay,
noise.
don't worry.
Yeah, so like I have a very chaotic mind. My brain is always just going and working, and it's one of the few things that actually quiets it down is going to the gym. Playing video games is another thing that kind of calms the chaos down in my brain. And music, actually I studied music initially in school. Music, I like to play the guitar here and there, although I don't really play that much anymore, or piano. That helps me quiet my brain down. But it really, physical activities are probably the best for me. I just like, it's the only time I'm able to shut my brain off and focus on something. Like I'm sitting here just thinking about how I feel the muscle moving and the muscle contracting, and I try to focus on that. And like you said, breathing and things like that, and being more in touch with my body.
Yeah. And it's a sort of distraction when you've got some music on as well, because it distracts a part of your brain that allows you to focus on the other things as well.
Yeah, it's part of the meditative process, really, and having music playing, like it definitely aids that, I think.
So yeah, and probably because we're coming up to an hour, mate. I don't know. I don't want to take up too much of your night.
Yeah, I got to roll here soon.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that's pretty much it. We've covered almost a lot of the topics I wanted to go over. So whether you wanted to discuss anything about your TRT clients, because that's predominantly my focus.
Yeah, I mean, I have a handful of guys that are on TRT. I have some guys that are natty. I have some guys that are full blown blasting gear, which is probably more my crowd. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because even with the PEDs, like everybody has identified me as the PED guy. Really, when I coach, it's just focused on nutrition. Really, that's kind of really my wheelhouse.
Training advocate as well, though. I know that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's all, I kind of look at it. Look, if you want to optimize your body, it's kind of the three-legged stool I talk about. You want to have your hormones optimized. You want your training optimized. You want your nutrition optimized. Yeah. You get those three things buttoned up. Now, obviously, there's other factors that go into it, rest, recovery, genetics. But I think those are the big things that if you have those bases covered and you have yourself optimized in those areas, you're going to have success as far as transforming your physique. And that's really where I focus on.
Those three come together. They're all synergistic. If you want to do, one by itself doesn't necessarily give you the outcome that you need. But
no, you can take all the PEDs you want and you'll still look like shit if your diet and training suck, and vice versa. I see guys that are training nuts and then they don't follow a diet and their hormones are horrible, and then they don't look good.
Yeah. All right then. Well, thank you very much, Paul, for your time.
I really appreciate it. Happy to come on and participate, and it was nice meeting you.
It was nice meeting you. It was a great conversation as well.